So there is a lot going on in the world of making contact. And of course, going all the way back to the beginning of when we were doing this Saturday Night Live, Alan Steinfeld, the author of Making Contact, has been an ongoing colleague, co-host. He's the man in the know. He was actually right there, front row practically, for the congressional hearings. He knows everybody in the field. And of course, with the release of the Age of Disclosure, boy, it's really out there right now. So before we get the update from Alan, I'm going to bring Neil in for this conversation too. Audience members, put into the chat box, have you seen Age of Disclosure? And what are your thoughts about it? What have you read? What are you seeing? And Alan, what's the skinny? What's going on out there?
Well, first of all, I want to say I am doing a roundtable discussion with the Hertogs on December 11th about the Age of Disclosure, part of our evolutionary leaders. So I was at the congressional hearing on September 9th, inside that congressional, it's like you feel very official being inside one of these congressional representative houses. I mean, they're rooms where they're questioning these witnesses. And this is the first time, September 9th, 2025, where military witnesses have come forward to say, yes, they have had contact. That was in front of Congress and in front of the world. And then recently we've had this movie, this documentary called The Age of Disclosure, where 34 insiders, people who know the secrets, have come out and said, yes, there are craft, yes, there are bodies, and yes, there's someone stopping us from telling you the whole truth. That was the rub there. So we are at a new threshold, and we have to just keep pushing for this disclosure. Someone like your guest, Danny Sheehan, keeps talking about, it has to be according to Danny and others, this has to be a people's movement. That's why I'm so glad we keep addressing this topic, Scott, because you got the audience to, let's start to have rallies. Let's start to bring people in. This is knowledge of reality that we've been denied. And that's, some people said, against our freedom of speech, our freedom to know the truth, our freedom to know reality. Would you say, Neil?
Exactly, yeah. The narrative that keeps coming back from a lot of people in the military is the potential for it to be a threat, right? And there's so much evidence to suggest that it's not, especially, I would say, two biggest pieces of evidence is that even the government officials are saying that they have evidence this has been happening for hundreds of years, to say it's been a threat for hundreds of years. And then a couple of officials saying that they found these UFOs at archaeological digs, right? Like, how ancient is this? And the thing is that if you continue saying it's a national, it could be a threat, then you get it becomes a matter of national security, and now you're allowed to keep certain things secret because it might, get in the way of national security. So that's one of the ways they've been able to cover this up and not release it to the public. But then a lot of people like David Grush and others are saying that, well, if you really look at this technology and the fact that Russia has these UFOs, China has these UFOs, that a lot of the technology actually isn't a national threat. And a lot of organizations or companies have reverse engineered these technologies and become multimillionaires off it and been hiding it for over 80 years, right?
Right.
So what I like to say is that there's some people say, well, we're not ready for contact with ETs yet. Our consciousness is not at that level. But then if government officials are interacting with them, dissecting bodies, having UFOs there, and they're ready for it, because like even David Grush just spoke to a congressional member a few days ago, and Ross Coulthart put out a tweet about it a couple of days ago, saying that David Grush filled him in on the interaction between the government, shadowy parts of government, and the Nordics and the Greys. So literally saying that there's interaction and communication with these beings right now, and a congressional member tweeted about it, right?
Wow.
So there's a whole
I didn't
world,
hear that,
a parallel world happening next to us. Yeah.
Didn't hear that Ross Coulthart interview, but I have to say it is a threat to national security, the people who want to control the minds and a certain narrative. It's a threat to their narrative to come out and have these public discussions and have whistleblowers come forward and say, look, reality is not what you've been conditioned to think it is. It's much bigger and wider, and I say more exciting. So we are being dumbed down. We're being kept in the dark. And it, like I said, it's a people's movement to rise up and tell the truth and tell what people have been experiencing. Like Marilyn, who's going to be a guest here tonight, has had experiences since she was a child. Mary Rodwell, who's been talking to kids who remembered their lives on other planets. This
Yeah.
isn't a way, there she is, Miss Mary. Mary, would you say that you have made, and Marilyn, talk a little bit about your contribution to the field, Mary, where you really validated some of these children's reports of having other lives on other planets?
Thanks, Alan, for that. Well, when you're working with experiences, over 3,000 to 4,000 now, families and children, you realize the intergenerational links. If a parent is having experiences, most likely the children are. But what's different about the children now is they're not shut down in the way that older generations were, either by programming and religious beliefs or cultures, and they're coming out with memory of other planets they came from, their abilities, their mission, why they're here, and the fact that they're telepathic, many of them. They not only communicate with animals, they plants and even crystals. This is all coming out with the children because they don't seem to have the same limit on being able to share, whereas the older generations that I talked to, there was a message almost subliminally, you can't talk about this yet. It's not time to talk about it. And now it seems that caveat has been lifted, and now these children are sharing their stories, and they're profound. They are absolutely connected to our cosmic family, and that is happening right now across the globe. And that is what's fascinating.
Well, one of the people who was a child who's come forward now with this, she's like a bridge, is Marilyn Gewacke. And Marilyn, why don't you talk about sort of what Mary's referring to, the childhood experiences, and then how you're integrating this into being an experiencer and messenger?
Well, when I was a child, I was on a craft. It was a teaching craft for human children, but there were also extraterrestrial children. These crafts still exist. There are many, many young children who go on these crafts. The purpose that I understand more and more from my memories of being on the craft, and my actual biological father was very familiar with this. He was the one that took me on the craft. And we learned how to expand our consciousness. We learned how to go beyond the veils that were present on Earth, especially at a time when I grew up, so that we could expand our consciousness and not have it be suppressed, as so many of us have had our consciousness suppressed. And on the craft, I learned how to do this. I met Zazar, who I channel. And part of the reason I was on the craft as a child is so I would be able to come and channel this cosmic being. But I think many, many people, and I think these children that Mary has worked with, their ability to shine their light in the way they do kind of goes out, emanates out into our world. And those children that have been on crafts that are reawakening their memories, those kind of memories are reawakening many memories of all generations on our planet of incredible galactic contact.
Right. Mary, what do you say about people like Marilyn coming forward at this point to make that bridge? I mean, have you worked with?
I think, yeah. Look, Marilyn, kudos to you for your bravery and courage. And I believe disclosure is going to happen from the ground up. It's unstoppable, because no matter what the governments want to do at the end of the day, it's the people ultimately have people power. And the fact that so many credible souls like yourself that are coming out, all ages. I mean, I was talking to a 90-year-old who lives in a care home that told me about her experiences all her life. But it's only now that she's actually talking about her experiences. So it's unstoppable. I think it's an activation, it's an awakening that no matter who you think you are in the governments, if you think you can stop that, well, good luck, because it is being disseminated in an energetic way, absolutely, as well as a verbal way, and on all levels of frequency, we're being activated. So there's no stopping this, whichever way the government wants to be.
And I love that, Mary, because I think many, many people have had contact, and many of these children you've worked with who have very little veils, they are all communicating telepathically in their higher selves. And there is a network of telepathic communication, whether people are aware of this or not. And that network of communication helps people be able to not only remember, but be able to tell their stories. And that network of unity consciousness that's being created by this telepathic communication among many people who've had contact. That's one of the beautiful things of having contact with the galactics, is that we learned that basically we communicate through telepathy, not just through worded language.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you know what Mary and Marilyn and Neil and a lot of us are talking about is that this is about experiencers. What the age of disclosure does not include is the people's experience. And that takes the phenomena to a whole other, more intimate level. And that's the movie that should be made, right? Right, Neil?
Exactly. Well, that's what I want to make with you, man. I mean, we created one documentary that was pretty good, and next one's going to be Messages from the Stars. That will be about channeled information and contact. But it's always like what really interests me is that if you look at all these whistleblowers, so-called whistleblowers, because actually they're not technically whistleblowers, many of them, because they actually submit their what they're going to say to the Pentagon and DoD before they say it to get it approved, and they're like two, like they're like they're not directly connected to programs. They have heard about people in the program. So one, we don't really have the people that are actually there reverse engineering craft and things coming out. Maybe Bob Lazar was one of them. Maybe there's one or two here or there. And then the other thing is like the conversation is taking so long to get to who are these beings? Why are they visiting us? What's behind them? It just keeps staying on the technology. But I am seeing it right now. I'm actually not pushing away the government disclosure. I feel that's part of it as well. And everything they do backfires, whether it's not got to anything to do with UFOs, got to do with other controlling mechanisms, because consciousness evolution is inevitable. Cycles of time are real, in my opinion. And as we're evolving, they're going to do things like put out government statements saying that they could be a threat. Is it China? Blah, blah, blah. But all that's really doing is letting more and more people who aren't in the know now start contemplating, oh my God, we're not alone in the universe. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's first, I think that's the first step, is to shift our consciousness to being open to that.
But also what Mary and Marilyn are both saying, that the telepathy and the channeling, this is, as Mary's book is titled, The New Human Coming Forward, that is using a greater facility of mind. Right, Mary? Isn't that your thesis?
Yeah, I mean, they're bringing in the frequencies. And I often point out you have these music shows where they have these children with incredible voices at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
And what they're doing, they don't realize, is they're bringing the frequencies through their voice. And they're all saying, aren't they amazing? Yes, they are, because they're bringing in all the higher frequencies and people are really moved by that, but they don't realize this is all part of the activation that's going on around the planet. And that's just one example of how it's happening, which is brilliant.
Marilyn.
Well, I'd like to say that these frequencies, these higher frequencies, are going to be the best contagious event on our planet. Contagious in a really good way, because once you start experiencing these higher vibrations, there's no return. As you say, Neil, there is no return. And by the way, when the government says that contact or ETs are a threat, I want to put a word out there to people who are beginning to remember they're having wonderful contact, that when it's framed that it's a threat, it sort of begins to suppress our consciousness and our remembrance. And I think that's another tactic for those experiencers that are beginning to know the truth of their own star families, of their own remembrances, and their own contact. And I think they are not a threat. I am saying this to everybody. Zazar, who I totally trust, this beautiful cosmic being, the extraterrestrials that are now around Earth are not a threat. And so allow yourself to go inside and feel these high vibrations building. And those vibrations often will create corridors that take you not only to your remembrances of contact, but take you to knowing the truth about you come from the stars.
Right.
This is what's happening on Earth.
And I think with that, Marilyn, a new neurocircuitry opens up so we can cognize, as I say, new realities. And this is what the telepathy tapes are so important about, right? You've heard that, Mary. And we are becoming telepathic. I just had 200 people in my remote viewing class. So we are accessing the new human, the superhuman, the greater mind. And it's really exciting times. And
Well, as we get out of that limbic system place, that stress management brain, there's still parts of the brain scientists have no idea what they are about. And those are the parts that are beginning to grow new circuitry for these new sensory modalities that are beyond our physical senses. And those parts of the brain are also building mind field circuitry of the fifth dimensional mind for the new human. And so that I can't think of a better time to be on Earth, even though it doesn't look like that.
that's Mary's book, The New Human. You want to talk about the new human you've discovered, Mary?
Well, the one thing I was going to actually say, apart from the fact that these children are across the globe, it doesn't matter what culture, what belief system, or where, what their programming is, they know who they are, and they know they've come with a mission or a mandate. Many of them say, well, I'm a hybrid, and they will mention their star family and that they're part of that star family, That to me is the amazing awareness. But looking at the agendas, when we wrote we did the survey with the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation Beyond UFOs, one of the most outstanding statistics with 4,200 people was 85% had a psycho-spiritual transformation. What does that tell you about agendas? Ultimately, that 50% had healing. 50% out of that 4,000 had healing on board craft. When you start to see when people try and make out that that ultimately this is a negative, nefarious kind of contact, you've got those kind of stats that are defying all of that, and people saying they've changed and transformed into a completely different perspective on life. They changed their life. They changed from materialism. They have become eco-friendly. All of these things. And the other thing that I've been working with many of them is they want to work with their multidimensional abilities. They start to open up. They start seeing orbs. They start feeling presences. They start getting downloads of information, star languages, light languages, and codes and all of this. This is part of the transformation that's actually going on, and wanting to know, well, how do I understand this? How do I now validate these experiences so I know that it's coming from that place? So my job often is giving them the tools so that they can work with that to a point where they're confident that they're working with balance in their new multidimensional abilities, and it changes their lives completely and utterly.
Right. Thank you, Scott.
How does this all relate to Ascension? What is Ascension? And from each of your points of view, maybe each of you give 1 minute or 2 minutes max on what is Ascension, and what is our portal to Ascension? How does this all relate?
Well, that has to start with you, Neil.
Let's do it. The word ascension, when I first started using the word ascension, portal to ascension, sometimes back in 2009, 10, 11, I would have some kickback where people actually were frustrated I was using that because they didn't relate or resonate with it. And some people are like, oh, we're not ascending, we're descending because we're coming down to earth, and I feel this is all semantics. And the thing is with ascension, and especially back in the day, I would say before 2012, a lot of people considered ascension to be a destination, somewhere where we're going. But the thing is, I feel the universe is one big Xerox machine. It just gives you what you put out there. So if you are putting out the energy of ascension that we are going into some other reality, but you're coming from a place of desperation or lack, or this world that as we know it sucks, basically, you're just going to keep getting more and more of that. So ascension to me is a paradox. Paradox is my favorite word. Everything in the universe and creation is paradoxical. The subatomic world is paradoxical. So the paradoxical element of ascension is the only way we can create an ascended world is by finding beauty in the moment right now. The only way we can create an ascended world is seeing ourselves, and Marilyn did an event with us this morning, and she said, Cesar said, seeing ourselves in the other, finding love in the other, finding love in this moment, seeing the beauty in the way the world is now. So yes, we're ascending these cycles of time where we go through a descension and forgetfulness and a remembrance, quite literally, that is tied to not just metaphysical information, but actual positions of our solar system and our galaxy, yes. But the ascended world is only going to be by us being present with each other, right?
Mhm.
Getting rid of distractions, allowing ourselves to feel, right, and heal. And by doing that, we end up expanding our hearts, feeling connection with each other, seeing ourselves in each other, and creating that world. So that's a short synopsis of how I feel what Ascension is.
Well, let me just jump in there. Thank you, Neil. I agree with everything. And what you're saying to me and what Marilyn and Mary are saying, it's a frequency. Ascension is increasing our vibratory frequencies, our level of thought, our openness to these other gifts we have. I call them the gifts of the spirit, the gifts of telepathy, remote viewing, remote healing, remote sensing, all these things that are beyond the physical, the five senses that we actually are have available to us in this new vibratory age. It's as we increase our own field, the cellular structure of our bodies starts to increase as we awaken more of the mind that humans have. And what these beings who are trying to assist us in knowing more of ourselves, in awakening more of this consciousness, to stop warlike behavior. You know, the favorite pastime Stanton Friedman used to say about humans is tribal warfare. And that can no longer be our favorite pastime as human beings. We need to really come from what I love, Zazar saying, a place of love, you know, love of self, love of others, love of the planet, and love of existence. We are part of a great cosmic family, and we've been so shut down and isolated, and we've done this to ourselves. And now the awakening, just that we're a part of something bigger, is a frequency that's going to ignite, I feel, the cellular structures in our body to start the ascension process. So that's a little bit what I have to say.
Beautiful.
Marilyn, what about you?
Well, I feel like ascension is the ultimate dissolution, dissolvement, disintegration of separation. And we have been separate. People ask, how does ascension tie in with disclosure? Well, one of the things we've been separate from is our cosmic community. We've been separated from ourselves, from our magnificent light fields. We've been separated from each other, from the plants on the planet, the trees, the animals, Earth itself, divine source. We've lived in a separation paradigm. We're coming out of that. To me, ascension is, as Neil said, raising the vibrations and frequencies of the now, so that we can see beyond the reality that we've been programmed to see. And in raising those vibrations, we have the vision to see into the new realities that are coming into Earth, that we ourselves are creating. And in that, we go from separation to a unity consciousness as a human race, and a unity consciousness with the galactics and with the celestials and with the ancient ones on Earth, till we're all in one holy whole. And in that process, we all ascend in the higher vibrational realm. And it's happening now.
Wow. How
Beautiful.
about you, Mary? Where's your ascension coming from?
Well, you've all been so eloquent. All I would say is, with working with so many beautiful souls, one of the things that many of them are connecting to is not only their subconscious, superconscious, higher self oversoul, but also the intelligences that support them, and realizing that everything is connected, that we're all part of the field, and we all have an influence on the field depending on our thoughts and where we want to be. And bringing it down to the very tangible biological level, which the other part of me always wants to mention, is that I believe that these frequencies are activating our very DNA and opening them up to the information that's available to them. I believe everything is held in our DNA, the Akashic records and all the other ways of gaining information. And one of the ways that's been happening is through frequency and opening up to it and accepting the changes with love and with acceptance. We realize just how amazing we all are, and how connected we all are, and how important every single person is in this wonderful matrix of reality. and to enjoy the journey rather than being afraid of it. I think fear is the one thing on our planet that is holding us back. And if we can transcend that, we are then part of something really quite incredible.
Wow.
Awesome.
Thank you. I just have a quick question for Cesar. Are we expecting an uptake on the energies as we move into 2026? What can we expect?
So I will tell you this. So much has been laid out, so much help from the higher realms, so many signs from the astronomical and the galactic realms have come into Earth. So many have awakened. 2026 will be the year of total manifestation. And so many of you are already manifesting, but you will learn how to hold the higher vibrations long enough for the vibrations to move your intuitive selves into forming new pathways that will guide you in actual manifestation of your gifts, your star codes, and your mission. 2026 will be an incredible, fertile year of humans manifesting their soul missions and their gifts on earth. And so much will be given to you on how to do this and what this means on a vibrational level. So many people begin to understand Ascension. Now it is time to manifest it so that more and more in the whole world can know the truth that it is happening now. So that's what I would say for next year.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I want to remind everybody that you can find Marilyn and all sorts of amazing presenters on Portal to Ascension. Just go to Portal to Ascension, click presenters, and then put in the name that you're looking for. And it's remarkable how many incredible presenters have been part of Portal to Ascension. Literally, it just goes on and on and on. There's our friend Adam Apollo, by the way, who will be on the show Wednesday night. So thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Cesar. Thank you, Neil. And speaking of Neil, not only is he an extraordinary, puts together conferences, events, Portal to Ascension, but he is a wonderful poet. And we love Neil's poetry. And so we are now going to have a Neil Gar poetry time.
All right. Thank you so much. So some of you may not know, poetry is one of my biggest passions. And actually, since the last time I've been on the show, which is I think over a year and a half ago, I've been taking music more seriously than I've ever taken in my life. And I've actually released 3 albums in the last year. So I'm going to put a link in the chat right now. You can take a look at my Spotify MC Resonance. And here in Colombia, I moved down here with my best friend, Chris Noble, and we just finished a 10-track album. And so when Omashar was performing and he said Central Sun, it really sparked something in me because that's the name of this album. It's called Central Sun. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. First one is my Spotify, MC Resonance. My album's out there. And then we're going on tour next year, starting in Athens, Greece, and then Amsterdam, healthemusictour.com. And that's going to be multidimensional sacred geometry, virtual reality immersion with hip hop music, poetry, singer-songwriter, aromatherapy, cacao chocolate, full-on multidimensional experience. So if you're in Europe, check us out, healthemusic.com, healthemusictour.com. And so today I'm going to do 2 poems that are on the new album, and it's a hip hop album, but it's like poetry with singer-songwriter. And the cool thing is, like, when I came down here in Colombia 4 months ago with my friend, and we were going to create music, we started sitting down to put it together. And as we were doing it, all of a sudden I went into the archives of music that I wrote when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And he went into the archives of beats that he created when he was the same age. And it was like a nostalgic moment. It was just so healing of our like childhood selves of when we just became adults after we left high school. And we created a whole album with my lyrics from when I was like first waking up to a lot of this and having universal questions. And if you know anything about my music, I like to freestyle rap. I'm a really fast rapper. I love to do slam poetry really fast as well. So the cool thing with this is straight up poetry, right? So this is like, so it's like we converted the poetry to hip hop. So the first one's called Butterfly Will Sting. And the first verse in the Butterfly Will Sting is basically a near-death experience. So you'll just listen to it from the it's basically somebody at the end of the world dying and what is seen in this new world. And then it gets into more of an evolution of consciousness and a new world energy. And then the other one is called Heaven's Calls. And when I wrote both of these when I was 1920, which is like 22 years ago now. And the second one is like when I was just waking up to a lot of this stuff, and I'm like, is heaven real? Does Jesus exist? Does heaven call, or just writings on the walls, right? So it's a conversation between myself and God, just like calling out to the universe. And so the album's going to be released in January. We're trying to drop it in January 2nd so that we can make it like the theme for the year, you know? And so again, you can check it out on Spotify. So here we go. This one's called Butterfly Will Sting. I can feel the creeping poison. The butterfly will sting. I hear the noise fading from the world which I'm in. If I open my eyes widely, I can see the creature's wings. I feel the earth maneuvering under the sun. The new age has begun. My destiny chose me wisely. No bruises, no cuts, no anything. I meditate and I meet with true friends. I see clouds surround the sun, like galactic arms embracing the one. The black hole would destroy the earth again, recycle my soul, my physical manifestation. The planet is moving, waiting to be pulled into this dimension. No pity for this world of men at insurrection's end, knowing that this chapter is over. It's time for the resurrection, once again. A stone throws away, contaminate, vain way to exercise brain. Different time, same day, fade away, fame will play a modest role. Stumble and fold, the scriptures told, masses in societal organization, embrace the revolutionized desolation, anarchy from control, peace from communal ambition, perishing souls. Stay or go, teach or be told, hate or let go, amateur or pro, friend or foe, duality of the physical world. Materialism of gold, money, diamonds, and pearls hurl the stone back into place. Blood and bones of the human race, the spirit of the bitterless lace, acid tests with psychedelic colors fascinate. And heavenly awake me. Ultimately face me as I morph the face of the humanity. The butterfly will sting. The butterfly will sting. The butterfly will sting. But it's just a temporary thing. Let's all take a deep inhale together. All right, this one's called Heaven's Calls. And I had the opportunity, I went to a conference called the Channel Panel in West Virginia a few weeks ago. And we went to an open mic and randomly had a live band playing behind me. And we got a chance to perform this. It was so impromptu. And this is going to be our first single that comes out. Heaven calls from beyond the waterfall. From a twinkle in the eye to a man standing 6 foot high, heaven calls from beyond the waterfall. And I immediately let everyone know I'm lost. Words, action, thoughts ingrained in my brain, all I wish to be superficially sane again, like these ants in the world. Living, loving, talking, engaging, eating, walking. A bowl of grain that was picked by someone less fortunate, maybe in sunshine or rain, heaven calls. While I drown in the waterfall. And I beg for forgiveness from all. From when I was small, I believe there was more to this planet, this universe, but they're only black holes. I realize I know nothing at all. Heaven calls, or is it just writings on the walls? Scriptures, prophecies, laws that make us think that we're not alone in this planet, in this universe? God is in your homes. Does heaven call? Or is it just a writing on earth's vast halls? What is the point of anger? God, do you really love me? Forgive me when I'm on my knees, begging God, please hear my cries. God, please tell me why I can only use a part of my mind until the moment I die. We are immaterial in a universe where only one world with billions of other races for your control. Why is my relationship with you so personal? How come I can see you in full form, right in front of my eyes, telling me all superficial existence is a lie? So find your own meaning to life. And when you die, I will hold you by my side, explain to you the divine that you cannot apprehend in a world of science. But I want to come right now. Leave this place because I don't belong. What I know makes it hard for me to go on, so wave your wand and facilitate my move into the next dimension with ease, please. I don't want to be in pain when I'm erased from this life of superficial gains. Pain is nothing but a signal being sent to your brain. Can you leave your material life? No, you're not ready to come. No, you're not ready to come. Some years must pass until your life is done. Thank you. The next part's the chorus. I don't have that. I can't sing, so thank you guys.
Let's do some beautiful twinkles. I just am always blown away by your beautiful wordsmithing and the passion. I tell you, we have a lot of passion tonight between you and Zazar. It's a passionate night. Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you, brother.
And please put into the chat box where people can find you on Spotify.
Yeah, so put the link there, MC Resonance on Spotify. Find it there. I have, one album that's just spoken word. We have a Dragon Light Language album coming out, which is you think I'm rapping in Sanskrit, but the whole thing is Dragon Light Language with hip hop instrumentals, and it's really cool. It's an activation album as well, so do check it out. But if you can join us on tour, if you're in Europe, then healthemusictour.com.
Great. Mary Rodwell is next, and we're going to have Alan introduce her, but his camera is off. So Alan, either pop in right away.
I'm here, Scott.
Um,
I am here and ready to introduce Mary. Yes.
There you are. Okay, great. Thank you.
Just taking a little.
I tell you.
Anyway, I do really think Mary, as we've been saying, holds a huge place in the not just disclosure, but the validation of experience, the validation that we exist beyond this time and space. Interviewing, talking to these young kids, which is her work, about their experiences, about remembering the places they've come from and the planets, and validating, like Zazar said, her interest is a validation that there's a truth going on that we can learn from these kids, and they have a lot to teach us about who we are as multidimensional beings. She has a chapter in my book, Making Contact, where she goes through all of her research, not all, but a specific point where she's talking to a lot of these kids, and they're talking about these multidimensional awarenesses they have. So Mary, I know your work continues. I know you're breaking ground in new areas, and I'm looking forward to hearing actually what are you working on now? Where does your work take you? And how does the new humanity look for you, Mary? Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Alan, for that and your kindness in what you're saying. Well, my work developed into looking at the children simply because I realized that many of these experiences that individuals have often meant that it was a family affair, that it wasn't just, mum or dad, but it was often the children. And that intergenerational link became more and more crucial because the parents were often, when I wrote my book Awakening, it was the parents saying, but I think my child is having experiences as well. And, I'm often fearful for them, worried about them. How do they best help them? All those kind of things really expanded my work into, well, what can I offer to help the parents help the kids? And that was ultimately developed into the book, The New Human. Because what I felt with the children was there were no old programs, no filters, no old belief systems that got in the way of the integrity of their experience. And time again, they blew me away. For example, one young 9-year-old, I was speaking to his father in the States about his experiences, and the young lad said, "Can I speak to Mary?" So I said, "Well, I'm quite happy to speak to you. Why do you want to speak to me?" And he said, "Well, it's because of your frequency," was how he introduced himself. And I said, "Oh, okay." And then he proceeded to tell me more about who he was, why he was here, his understanding of his role, his mission, his purpose. And the interesting thing for me was often these children did not have the same concerns or fears that their parents had. And they were very much more in control of how they understood their multidimensional reality. For example, they would quite openly talk to me about some of the experiences. And I always remember one 8-year-old, again, her mother was speaking to me and she said, "I want to tell Mary about what happened a couple of nights ago." And I said, "Well, I'd love to hear what happened a couple of nights ago." And she said, "Well, I was on a spacecraft. They were showing me how to drive it, which star systems to go to. And they took me to a planet where I learned some abilities," she said, like how to levitate, how to use my psychic abilities. And she said, and then they took me to a spacecraft. And there they were showing me how they altered different DNA in different species. So they create new species, which they seed other planets. And again, this is what's really important here for anyone wanting to know how that is. Most of these parents, in fact, I would say all of them, have never front-loaded their children about their experiences, never talked about it. This is the child mentioning their experiences. And the only thing is that many of them are quite bewildered in how to respond to their child that's speaking about these things that for them are still very, very confronting. And one of the things that I'm often asked, and I found when I wrote The New Human, I was expecting it to be only something that the weird and the wonderful community, whether it was the New Age or metaphysical community, might read. I certainly didn't expect clinical psychologists to read it and educators to read it and a wide variety of parents to read it, and telling me how they're recognizing these children, no matter where they come from, in terms of what we call mainstream society, and saying, what do we do about someone that's talking about their experiences when they're 6, 7, 8 years old, talking about the fact that they're a hybrid and explaining why they believe they're a hybrid, for example. And, you know, to give you another example of a 7-year-old that explained to me she was a hybrid, she was part blue avian, part human, that she knew that she'd bring in light language for healing and saying, I know how to heal people and I show them how to heal themselves. This is all quite spontaneous. And what gave the children, for me, the power over any kind of dissent in terms of their accounts was this was coming quite spontaneously. Often the child has no conception that that's not okay to talk about it. And I'll give you another example. You may see this picture right behind me here. I remember an 8-year-old coming with his mum into my room and saying, "Oh, I've been there." And he said, "The planet that's on there to the side, it's a bit bigger than that. And I've been through that portal," he said, "to go to other dimensions," and proceeded to tell me that when he goes on board spacecraft, he's connected to the mantis beings. And he said, "They're my family. And when I die, I'm going back to being a mantis." And then described going on board his craft, and he called it evaporating into a mantid form for a time. And I said, "How does that feel?" He said, "Well, a bit strange, but it's okay because I have a little mantid that also talks to me." Now, where do you get such incredibly profound information like that when it's an 8-year-old telling you quite spontaneously how they understand themselves? For me, I was just blown away by it. And I couldn't see how anyone could in any way create this as or explain this away other than it has integrity. So when Alan says Mary's listens and open, I have no choice but to do so, because ultimately, how can I in any way disqualify something that's so profound in children that are coming out spontaneously with this. And the biggest issue for the children, which was quite sad to hear when I spoke to this young man about his time where he went on board craft with a couple of school friends and explained that he was being educated on board craft, and explained that there was a group, some of them are human children, some of them are not human. I said, how do you know? And he said, well, the ones that aren't human have different shaped eyes, he said, and they were showing me how to use my mind to create things. And they gave me complex information. So I said to him, so complex information? I said, can you tell me some of the complex things that you're being taught? And he said, no, he said, because it's too complex for you. And so I was kind of put in my place pretty well there and then. But what was sad for me was the fact that I did say to him, what about your two friends from school that go as well on board craft? And he said, I said, do they remember? Did you ask them if they remember going on board craft? And he got quite cross and he looked at his mum, who was in the room with him. And he said, Mum wouldn't let me. And she explained, well, I was afraid that if they didn't remember, in some way they would see that he's rather strange or unusual, and I didn't want him to have that experience. So the biggest issue for star seeds and the young ones is the fact that we live in a society that denies their experience, a design, and stops them from being open about their experiences. So the one thing that I have always said to the parents is, because they say, how can we help? I said, well, they're getting help from their space family, their star family. I said, but you can help by giving them someone to talk to that listens and honors their experiences, because that will help them ground and help them be part of this new burgeoning awakening of humanity, because they've all come with gifts, they've all come with tools to help us break through the veils, and really they've come as our teachers. So I said, what we can do more than anything is help them understand being human, help them understand how to have a healthy body and healthy life. But ultimately, we're there to listen to them and for them to teach us how to be more of an awake, advanced consciousness on the planet, and to help their role as a mission. There's so many stories I could tell you. I mean, I've written many of them in the book, The New Human. But what I'd like to say is, if you have children, then the most important thing parents say to me, what can I do to help? And I said, just listen. Just listen to their stories, because most of the time they won't be able to speak to anybody else. So for me, that's the most important thing with the new star seeds and what have you. But my main thing I'd like to say is that's been my job, really, to listen and to hear and to be a place of safety for those that are having experiences, so they can start to honor and validate their own experiences and to become all that they're meant to be.
You found that the different children that you're working with, are they telepathically connecting with each other, kind of like we've heard in the telepathy tapes?
Absolutely. They're recognizing each other and connecting, often through the parents that are also awake and having experiences and whatever. They're also introduced on the craft. Many times they will suddenly meet somebody on planet Earth that they've met actually on the craft. But I've also met those that are walk-ins as well, that have met others like themselves. And I always remember a wonderful lady. She was she said to me, I'm a walk-in. I said, how do you understand that? She said, well, I come from a wonderful craft, a cylindrical craft. I'm 9 feet tall, blue eyes, and we were telepathic. And she said, and we absorbed food through light. But I suddenly found myself in a 3-year-old body, she said, where I had to learn to talk and I had to learn to eat, because I'd never done that before. And she said, and there's a few of me on the planet, she said, but I'm there as a kind of reporter. I go back and report what it's like to be human. And she said, I have met some like myself. Occasionally, I've recognized them, and we all sort of know each other. So there's this wonderful connection on another level with many of the star seeds, with their star family. And one of the things that I'll say to people when I'm working with them, usually to take them by surprise, because they'll say, well, I don't know if I've got any connection to any star system or whatever. And I'm saying, but do any of them ever, come to mind when you're thinking of stars? And they'll say, well, Pleiades keeps coming to mind. And I said, well, what do you think that means? What do you think that means? The fact that that's the one star system that keeps coming to mind. So a lot of my work now is helping the adults to remember who they are, and to remember that what they've come for, and to gain confidence in their skills again, their multidimensional skills, so they can start to trust themselves and become fully multidimensional again, so that they're in harmony with their physical selves. So for me, the most important thing with that work is giving people the encouragement to realize that's been with them all along, that it's been suppressed or it's been programmed out, and to remind them it's all there, and that's all they actually need to actually be fully human.
God bless you for the wonderful work you're doing. A lot of wonderful comments in our chat box. I want to let people know where you can learn more about her. Her website is her name, maryrodwell.com.au, because she is in Australia. maryrodwell.com.au. And is there anything you'd like to make sure that our audience knows in terms of your offerings as we look at your website here?
Well, I do hypnosis as well to help people recover missing memories and whatever. So my work primarily is helping people to connect the dots to their own mysteries in their life, and to gain confidence in their multidimensional abilities, to realize the best guru they can have is themselves, and to start trusting their own truth and their own resonance to truth. That you can have as many gurus as you like out there, but no one knows you better than you. And if I can help you trust in that part of yourself again, then my work's done.
Beautiful. And you do work with people by Zoom, yes?
Yes, absolutely. Hypnosis and all altered states can be done extremely well over Zoom. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, as long as you can speak English.
Fantastic. Neil, anything you'd like to add or share?
Yeah, there's a few things that stood up from what you're saying that I just like really resonate with. That, we often say that now is the time of the self-guru, not the age of there was a time for gurus to come down when the frequency was at, well, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, when the frequency was at a level that we needed teachers to come in. So as you're saying this, I'm realizing even more, we can say that it's the time of the self-guru, but you're actually assisting the children coming in before the indoctrination is put on them, saying that they need someone to follow, right? And the another component was when you said that thing about the star system, um, and that person saying, well, I feel connected to the Pleiades. Our subconscious mind is continuously leaking real information, right? And then this one question I have for you now. They often say to us, oh, you're imagining that. Oh, it's just your imagination. But these children have such strong imaginations. So what's your take on the imagination being a window to a greater truth?
The way that I help those individuals that are opening up multidimensionally, their clairvoyance, their clairaudience, their clairsentience, their sensing, knowing, intuition, and what have you, they're still concerned, even when they get downloads, where is it coming from? Can I trust it? Is it real, or is it my imagination? I said, and actually, multidimensional information is instant. You don't have a chance to think it. It's already there. Whereas when you actually create something, you've got to think it to create it. Therefore, that's a very distinct difference. In other words, if you think of your bedroom, you know right away where your bed is, where your window is, where your door is, because it's real. If I said create or imagine a bedroom, you'd have to think to create it. You'd have to think, well, how big would the room be? Where would I put the window? Where would I put the bed? Where would I put the door? It's a completely different process. So instant information is coming either from your multidimensional superconscious higher self, or another intelligence, your guide, your guardian angel, whatever name you want to give to that other source, or your ET connections. It'll be instant before thought. And once you've got a handle on that, you can't mistake it because it's coming in without you even knowing often what it is that you're going to bring through, as anyone who channels knows. So it's actually very easy. It's just helping people to know the difference. With left brain, you think before you speak, right brain, you speak before you think. And once you get a handle on that, you've got it. It's as simple as that.
It's a deep level of trusting yourself, right? Because if
Yeah.
'cause that's the whole thing. I've had hypnosis sessions, and the first couple sessions, I would doubt myself, and then it got to a point where I trained myself to trust what came in immediately. Because if you start doubting yourself, then you start to think like, "Am I seeing myself on Orion? Like, is this what's going on?" And then other components come in
Yeah.
there. So it's
I
it's
call
like it's a deep healing that you need to do to trust yourself on that level.
It's stopping the left brain interfering and coloring the information, which is what we often want to do because we want to somehow alter it. The main thing is to trust it is coming in with integrity as a frequency and not to get in the way of it, as anyone who channels knows.
Yeah, yeah. That's a life lesson there. Goes across the board beyond hypnosis, right?
Yes.
Mary, thank you so much. You're amazing. I always love every time we do an event, I say the same thing. I just love having you on and just seeing the updates just continuously unfolding. And you've worked with over 3,000 children, is that right? Since now?
Well, families and
Yeah,
children, the
families and
whole,
children.
yes.
That's incredible. Yeah. Thank you
Thank
for being here, Mary.